Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dementia Unplugged. I'm Jeannie Forrest, and will be hosting this program along with Dementia Society of America. Today, we're going to be talking about building tenacity and resilience as a caregiver. So, looking forward to this important program. A message from the Dementia Society of America. I just want to start out with this little disclaimer. All content, including any potential medical information, is provided as an informational resource only and is not to be used or relied on for any diagnostic or treatment process. It should not be used as a substitute for professional diagnosis, care, or treatment. Please consult your healthcare provider before making any healthcare decisions or for guidance about a specific medical condition. The opinions expressed and the content shared by me, Dr. Forrest, and my guests are not necessarily the opinions and content of the Dementia Society of America. Thanks for listening. Before we get started, I typically like to go over the word dementia, so we're all hearing sort of the same language, especially if you're new to the program. So think of the word dementia as an umbrella term, and underneath it are different subtypes of various conditions or diseases that present itself in what we talk about as a dementia. You may be more comfortable and more familiar in hearing words like Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, Lewy body, frontal temporal, and so on. There are at least 200 plus different conditions and diseases that present itself as dementia, but often you may hear about 4 or 5 more common subtypes. Unfortunately, many are not curable, in terms of our current understanding and science. That said, you should know that dementia is not a normal part of aging. Typically, it indicates that there is some underlying pathology. And it does involve a variety of cognitive functions, not just memory, but it could include different behavior, motor skills, the ability to have rational thought, insight, mood, and there's a whole variety of cognitive functions that are impacted much more than memory. We also want you to know that Dementia Unplugged Care Conversations is just one facet of Dementia Unplugged. This is the first Monday of each month. There are 2 other programs. The second is Dementia Unplugged Musical Connections. These are sessions with brain health scientists and performers who really talk about the benefits of personalized music. What's important to that particular individual. It is a life enrichment program that takes place on the 3rd Monday of each month, and it is in partnership with a program called Music and Memory. Lastly, there is a Dementia Unplugged Artful Insights. This is a casual conversation talking about personal perspectives of different pieces and works from a variety of museums. It happens on the 4th Monday of each month in partnership with Arts Philadelphia. So your Mondays are booked. Now I'm really excited and honored to introduce our guest today, Vanessa Wright Adams. Vanessa Wright Adams is a care partner advocate and was a family caregiver who sparked her interest in this field and has really Um, just been like it says, a wonderful advocate. A little bit about her background. She's a native New Yorker and a proud alum of the University of South Carolina. She retired from working within the airline industry, and she is now residing in Scottsdale, Arizona. She started her own business travel organization and also had experiences in human resource and talent acquisition. So she, at this point, is looking forward to renovating her 130-year-old ancestral home. Wow, Vanessa, you got your work cut out for you. And is restarting her travel company and continuing to consult on an HR recruiting efforts for a small business. So Vanessa, life is full. And we're ready in a moment to get started. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing these slides so we can take a look and meet Vanessa.
Thank you, Jeannie. Good morning.
Good morning. Always glad when the technology works so far, so yay. Okay, so welcome. So Vanessa, you have such a wide variety in terms of background, but I want to zero in on this advocacy piece as a family caregiver. Can you share a little bit about that history and how you became involved?
Sure. Trial by fire, I think, is how I would describe it. And the person that I was caring for is my mother, and she was a gifted, bright, active woman. And at some point, there were little signs that I missed, but from about 2012 to 2019, I became, full-time responsible for her care. And initially, I started trying to do it long distance because I was living in Scottsdale, Arizona. She resided in Camden, South Carolina. And I had no idea of the magnitude of what was what because it's such a gradual decline. And, it's not 100% all the time. Sometimes she seemed perfectly normal and fine. And when you're talking to someone over the phone or you're doing a short visit, they mask, their symptoms so well, and they can paint a beautiful picture and you think everything is fine until it's not. So that's the perspective, that got me sort of into this.
Okay. Yeah. So you were catapulted into this, like many other who may be on the call today as family caregivers. This is not something people signed up for, not anything that people went to school for, and all of a sudden, there you are with a loved one who's going through these changes and all of that difficulty. Okay. So we're here to talk about that journey and this whole idea of tenacity. And I love that because that's what it takes. So how would you describe tenacity, resiliency, tenacity, and how that became important to you?
Sure. When I think of tenacity, I think of like a bulldog that's like biting down on something that just won't let go. And so I thought that was a little ferocious. So I actually looked up the definition to see for some other words, that was a little bit more, acceptable, I guess, in my mind and heart. And so for tenacity, it said it's the quality of persistence, determination, a firm grip, never gives up. And once you take on the role of a caregiver and that person or persons, it's your responsibility for their safety and, health and well-being, then you have to develop that tenacity because it's your responsibility now and you can't give up.
Okay.
Right. And similarly for resilience, There are 7 characteristics that kind of, will give you a picture of what resilience is.
Okay.
And I'm going to read them off if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Um, Self-awareness, see yourself clearly and thoroughly, be realistic, keeping calm when under stress, empathy, self-control, motivated, and optimistic. And so when I look at all 7 of these characteristics, I clearly understand, and that's what I would share. So self-awareness, it's important that you see yourself clearly and thoroughly, because this will show you what you're made of. If you didn't know before and you're actually caring for someone with dementia, you will learn quickly just how strong you are. And it'll show you what you're made of. Not necessarily defining you, but you will learn, what your strengths and weaknesses are. And the sooner you can do that, I think the better it is for everybody. Right? Realistic. You really need to be realistic and know what you can handle. Because not only does that put your, patient or loved one in a precarious position, it also puts you and your family as well. So you kind of need to say, I can handle up to this point. I don't think I can handle beyond that. And kind of do that up front if you can, so that if and when it gets to a point where you really can't, you're already kind of looking for it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, thank you for that. I'm sitting here thinking, because you may know, and others, that I was also a family caregiver years ago, and I'm thinking about, I really stepped into it. I didn't know what I didn't know about myself till I was way overextended. So I didn't have the foresight of sort of laying out that framework. Was that ever your experience where you're like, my goodness, I shouldn't have done it this way, or I'm way over my head, or did you have a sense of having those boundaries?
Yeah, for the most part, honestly, I would say that all of this is hindsight.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
When I had other friends who were caring for their parent, it was so easy to say, oh, forget it, I could never do that. Or, oh, that's where I would draw the line, or whatever. Well, let me just say that when you are actually living it, you go so far beyond that. So those are artificial boundaries, right? That you think you can't do. But like, for an example, in the beginning, when I had brought my mother to live with me, she was falling all the time, and I could pick her up.
Okay.
Eventually, it got to a point, either I got weaker or she became more dead weight or something, where I just could not physically lift her. I would use that as an example, to know that, okay, when it gets to the point where she's not able to help me help her get up or sit down or move, what do I do then? What are my options? So if you kind of think through maybe a little bit of something like that, or
that's excellent.
What I do if, and honestly, this never happened to me, but I've heard it happen to other people, where the person becomes belligerent and might physically, attack or hit or throw something or whatever. Honestly, that was not my experience, but I know that does happen. Is that something you can figure out a way to work through? You just kind of need to know what your triggers are a little bit better, know yourself a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, I think you've hit a good point, Vanessa. People often ask me, well, when's the right time perhaps to get more help or to transition my loved one into a care community? And they're always looking sort of the onus only on their loved one. But what I say is, you're in this together. And if
Mhm.
you fall apart, if you get sick, if you hurt yourself, then it's not going to be helpful to anyone. So you got to think of your own limits and your ability. So thank you for expressing that. And this is the unplugged version, everyone. And you know that. This is not sugarcoating. This is hard stuff. So thank you, Vanessa, for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. And so the next point was keeping calm under stress.
Yeah.
So, that kind of goes hand in hand, right? And I don't know if it's scientific, but I believe that stress can kill.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it can.
Right. So it's critically important to understand and realize that. So you need to do things that will lower the stress level for the person and kind of accept the fact that if you can lower the stress for the person, that will also lower the stress for you.
Mm-hmm.
So they're really linked together.
Absolutely. No. Excellent point. Yes. Yes.
So, if you have to tell a little white lie so that the other person doesn't get upset,
Tell
then
us more about that because people struggle with that whole quote white lie approach. Tell us maybe for people who are new to this, what does that mean?
okay. So I think there's two things at play. There's some individuals who really have a need to be right all the time. And so it's very challenging for them when the person with dementia says something that's not true or accuses them of something or says something that happened that really didn't happen. And or maybe you told them something and they say, no, you didn't tell them. And kind of in the early stages, you kind of constantly want to correct them, thinking that, maybe they'll realize that you did tell them something or, whatever. It's a whole bunch of different reasons why.
Yeah.
But my point is, it's so much easier to just say, you're right, I didn't tell you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
An example, this woman I was talking to, I guess it's part of my advocacy, she said that there was a family wedding and she had told her dad about it. And I guess it came close to the wedding time. And he's like, what are you talking about? I don't know anything about a wedding. And she kept insisting, yes, Dad, I told you, it's on whatever. And I said, it would have been so much easier to just go, you know what? Doggone it, I forgot. I'm so sorry. Or I thought Mom was going to tell you, or something, so that he wouldn't be like all agitated and upset. And then you're not banging your head against the wall because you want to make him realize that you had told him. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll never win those arguments. You go round and round. Yeah.
And so, then I had a family member say, well, I'm not going to lie. I'm like, yeah, you kind of need to,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually, months later, when there was like no other choice, then you find yourself, having to do it. And you go, see, now you could have done that so much earlier and all of you would have been just, la-di-da, at least for a little while, because chances are they're going to forget again. So.
No, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah. That's a tricky tightrope to walk. But if the intention is to keep someone calm and happy, that is a very useful approach. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful. And then empathy is next. And I would just say, if you think about it and you try to put yourself in the shoes of that person, how would you feel if someone was constantly telling you that you did something that you, in your mind, know you didn't do? Or that you said something that was mean or cruel, and you see yourself as a very nice person, and you would never say that. And so, in your mind, they're accusing you. and it's just coming at you all the time, how would you feel? And then I think that would give you a little bit of, because even though the person won't say it, I believe they have to know that things are off kilter. You
Yeah,
know,
they absorb that negativity, that tension, and that's what often contributes to this distress and anxiety because
Mhm.
I'm doing things wrong all the time and people are telling me, no, stop, don't do that. I can't imagine living my day walking through it and hearing those words all the time.
Right. And so I think if you can somehow put yourself and think of how that would feel, that
Mm-hmm.
that might give you a little bit more space
Mm-hmm.
to act a little slower, be a little kinder, all those things that you kind of need to do when you're,
Sure.
working with someone who has dementia.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, that leads into self-control. And two things come to mind with that. Number one, try to resist self-medicating.
Okay. Yeah.
And I know that there are times where you might go, oh my God, this person is driving me to drink, like literally,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
whatever. Don't recommend that.
Uh-huh. Sure. Yes.
And then the other thing is, just learn how to do breathing exercises, meditation, because you don't want to have to yell or scream or throw things, the same way you don't want them doing that to you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to, be in a situation where you're doing that either to them or to someone else. Sometimes when your stress level is so high, you take it out on the people around you, and you can't take it out on that person who has dementia. So you might be snappy with your children or with your coworkers or somebody else. So um,
Were there things that you particularly did that were useful for your own self-care to manage that stress?
I took walks.
Okay.
I'd get up in the morning before she'd wake up and, just go for a 20-minute walk, 30-minute walk. I felt at that point that it was safe enough where I could leave her, because she'd
Mhm.
still be in bed. And, I would just go and kind of commune with nature a little bit, watch the sunrise and
Sure.
that kind of thing. That was always good. Or, I take a little time out sometimes, put on some jazz music or something relaxing. And that's another thing. Like I would like play music for my mom. And so
Mm.
not only would that help her, she'd just sit there and listen to it, but it would help me too. Just kind of, you know,
Mhm.
just some like maybe sometimes I put some classical on, sometimes I put some light jazz. I would put some songs from the 50s and 60s because that was more like her era.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that was helpful too.
Good. Okay.
Yeah,
Useful.
yeah.
Okay.
And the number six was motivated. You have to be motivated because it really comes down to survival, you know, for everyone involved. You have to have the mindset that we're going to survive this one way or the other, you
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
um, to me, that's what I think of about motivated, you know.
Okay. Okay.
Um, And then the last one is optimistic. And, you know, for me, it was my faith in God and then my belief in myself.
Hmm.
Uh, I've strongly felt, and I don't have any siblings, to help me. So it really was just me. And I was very appreciative of the type of mother she was to me and the sacrifices she made for me. And it was such an honor for me to be able to take care of her.
Mhm.
It was my way of paying it back to her.
Mm.
And so that helped me, in terms of having, being optimistic that somehow God would find a way for me to
Yeah.
do whatever it was that needed to be
Yeah.
done and, provide the care, that she
Yeah.
needed.
That's a beautiful framework, and um, and that worked well. Unfortunately, there's a spectrum of relationships where there wasn't a great bond between the mother and the daughter, or the son and and that makes caregiving it adds some additional challenges. But I'm glad for you that you found that as a giving back.
Yeah, it does. And, the only thing that I could say to someone who's in that situation where they aren't particularly close to the loved one or whatever, is you have to do what feels right to you
Mm-hmm.
and how you would want someone to treat you.
Sure.
Right. So regardless of whether or not the person is deserving, that's, between them and whoever.
Mm-hmm.
But I, I grew up sort of like, I was fortunate enough to know my great grandmother until I was 17 years old.
Yeah,
A lot of people,
yeah.
could say that, I know for sure. But when I was a little girl, she used to say to me, honor and shame and let no condition rise. Act well your part. There's where the honor lies. And that has been my creed since I was probably like 4 or 5 years old. So it's like, no matter what anybody else is doing, you know what the right thing is to do. So, it's your character and, just, try to do your best. That's all you can do.
That's right. Well, thank you. Thank you for outlining those bullets and how your your life and your experience intertwined with them. So I want to ask just a few more questions and let the audience know in a little bit. I'll be opening it up to Q&A, and you'll be able to put your questions through the chat or Q&A section. What would you wish you knew up front? Are there anything that you would like to have known before you started this journey?
Yes,
What would have been useful?
Yeah. So I thought about that question, and two things. I think, what services, if any, would have been available at the different stages? I think if I'd known that up front, it would have saved me a little bit of headache. And it's different from state to state. There's, some states, they don't provide anything. If it's not a private organization or something, then you're kind of like having to fend for yourself. Yeah. But that would have been helpful to know if there was any financial resources, if there was any, like, I didn't understand about respite care, like if there was somebody that could have come in and just sat with her for a little bit to give me a break, well, now there's a little bit more, like, because of COVID, like there's, now you can do like grocery delivery and that kind of thing. Yeah. But a couple of years ago when I was going through it, there was a lot that I just didn't even know that would have been helpful to know. So I would say that. And then the other thing is the financial responsibility. Kind of need to know whether the person that you're caring for, do they have the resources to pay for the kind of care that they're going to need? Are you going to have to come out of pocket for any of that? Have an idea as to how much it will cost and, kind of figure out how you're going to manage that. Because when you're in the thick of it and you've got all kinds of, you got to take care of yourself, your family, you got to take care of that person, you have to pay for care, it could be, financially devastating. Yeah. I don't know if it would have changed anything for me if I knew, but I think it wouldn't have been a shock.
Yeah. It is for many families to understand that the totality of the out-of-pocket expense is phenomenal. And it does put people under, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think for people to hear that and to start planning ahead if they have a loved one or are diagnosed and looking at ways of paying. So, yeah. Yes. There, did you want to talk a little bit about hospice and palliative care as something to know about?
Yeah. I think that there's a big misconception just generally out there. When people hear hospice, they just recoil, or they may have loved ones that, they're like, nope, they're not ready for hospice yet because they think that it's like a death sentence or that you're giving up on them. And all I could say is that I think you couldn't be further from the truth with that. I wish that I had put my mother into hospice service a lot sooner than I did because of the level of care.
Mm-hmm.
And it would not have cost me anything more. It's just, the same way Medicare, pays for whatever it was paying for her. The hospice service would have gotten paid. It's just a different budget line item, is my understanding. And a lot of it is the palliative care. So it doesn't necessarily have to be end of life, but if you put your loved one into hospice service, they get like you don't have to take all the services, but there's the what do you call it? Like, if the minister or the priest or whoever
Pastoral care, yeah.
will care. There's the nursing assistant that can come in and help with the daily living activities. If you need help with that in terms of showering and combing their hair and, that kind of thing, you get the nursing aspect of it that will come and check on them. And the social too, who can, maybe give you some guidance and some help, answer some questions. So you have these resources that you don't have if they're, just strictly like under like regular Medicare or whatever. And I think, like for me, the turning point, had I known this, was when my mother became incontinent.
Mm.
And that's like one of the qualifying things. And a lot of times I find that even doctors don't really understand that it's okay if you've got a patient that is not going to get better, and that over time they're deteriorating. You can certify them, because you need to have a doctor to be able to certify them into hospice care. And you can even keep the same doctor you have, or you can go with a different, so there's, a lot of options. But especially if they're in a facility, I just think that having those extra eyes and ears and personal care is so much better for your loved one.
Thank you for that shout out. I'd been involved in hospice care since 1984, right when the benefit started. And it's always been an upward struggle to have people really understand the benefits of the palliative, the symptom management that merges into hospice end of life care when someone has a prognosis of most likely 6 months or less. And the whole team that can give you support, including volunteers too. So, yes.
And there's some people that have been in hospice service for over a year.
Yeah.
I think they get recertified or something. I'm not sure how that part
works. They continue to show decline. They can. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a whole other world, but I'm glad we brought it up because I think it is a valuable to anyone, dementia or not. We're all going to die someday. So, but I think it is valuable, particularly in caring for people with that. We had talked a little bit earlier, and before we open to questions, was there a poem you said you were going to share? Is there
Yes. And I got this from my first cousin, Eric. He used it when his mother passed away. She also suffered from dementia. And, we pray every day that we don't fall under the same, fate as, our mothers did. But I'd like to share it.
Please.
It says, I have dementia. My eyes do see, my ears do hear. I am still me, so let's be clear. My memory may fade, my walk may slow. I am inside, don't let me go.
Mm, yeah.
And to me, that's a call out to everybody who knows someone with dementia, whether you're a caregiver or not, that the person that you knew or love, yep, they're different, but there's still a lot of them that's still inside because it's not a constant thing. So
Yeah.
don't talk about them in front of them as if they're not there. You know, people have a tendency to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Scream thinking they can't hear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not deaf. And don't be afraid, you know, just have a little patience. You know, some people I think are just scared to be around,
Mm-hmm.
especially with advanced dementia. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. No, and I think that speaks to your advocacy. Everything that you have talked about today is you are, you show the strength, the beauty of the caregiver, the strength, the beauty of the person living with dementia, and to keep in mind that there's still me. That I'm alive inside here. I may not be able to communicate as well as I used to, but you stuck with it. So thank you. I think your words are going to be very helpful.
I hope so.
So I want to open it up to the audience. And let me start with, oh, you got to love that poem. That was a call out. So from Kevin. And Christine is asking this question. How can you convince them to sign power of attorney or living trust documents over to you so that you can help them manage their finances, especially if they are getting paranoid and distrustful? Any thoughts? Was that in your experience at all?
Yeah,
That you
yeah. I'm going to try to put my best face forward on this one.
Okay.
Full disclosure, I never got power of attorney from my mother. By the time I realized that I, absolutely should have it or needed it,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately for me, and I would, say with other people as well, as far as like paying her bills and stuff, I just set up accounts online, put my email address and, created the password for myself and just paid everything, just online. If my mother and I was in the same state at the time, or if she was living with me, I think I would have gone the route of trying to get conservatorship for
Mm-hmm.
her.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best route, but I was more concerned that it would blow back on me because I wasn't like there all the time, that I didn't want to get in trouble
Yeah.
for, not being the responsible person for her. So I, had to do all these workarounds. But that was one of the points that I didn't want to bring up was as soon as you can get it, to try and get it. But once you get to a certain point, I don't know.
Yeah.
I
There's a
don't think
lot
it's
more.
possible to convince them.
Yeah. And you may not be able to. And so that's where in many states, it's depending on your relationship, it often power of attorney might automatically go to the spouse and then the adult children and things like that. But the message here, everyone, is if you're as soon as the diagnosis takes place, to get that paperwork under wraps, so that that's the least of your concerns. You have that done. Um, um,
Sometimes they go in and out. Like sometimes you can have a nice window where there's pure clarity there. And if there is, then be prepared, maybe have papers drawn up ahead of time or, find an attorney that will work with you so that, a phone call. They can, be there or jump on Zoom, or you can have it notarized or something if you get that window of clarity.
Yeah, yeah. And to frame it as this is the way to help me, mom or dad or whoever. This is going to help both of us versus framing it negatively, like, well, you can't do this anymore, so now you need to hand stuff over to me. That you can see where a paranoia or a mistrust might be set up, depending on how you approach it. But if you're saying, well, this would really help all of us, if you could help me with these papers. So think about if you're in the audience and wondering how I can have that conversation. It has to be a pleasant experience. It should not be seen as punitive or something that someone can't do anymore. But Vanessa's right,
Jeannie, because that was how I was able to get initially someone to come in to my mother's home.
Mm-hmm,
She just absolutely did not want it. And I told her that with me flying back and forth, I needed someone to help me clean the house. Like I said, I can't work full time and then come and be expected to do all of this. I need help. So while I was there, I had this lady come in a couple of times while I was there.
Yeah.
And that kind of got her familiar with the person coming in and doing certain things around the house. And then that was able to continue for a while until it didn't work anymore. But at least,
got it started.
Bought me some time.
Okay. Any other questions? We'll give it another minute as I just want to reinforce how real, how raw, how unplugged this conversation has been, and to use that experience. And I think that's where you continue to be an advocate. Oh, hold on, here comes the question. Do you have any suggestions on finding an affordable and reputable home care aid? Did you want to try that one? A home care aid?
Oh, that's so hard. I would say an agency is probably your most reliable source, but interview them as if you were interviewing someone that you were going to hire for a job, like the first caregiver that I had in Arizona was because I was desperate because I didn't have a whole lot. I mean, it was a critical incident. So I had to snatch my mother up and bring her home with me. And I still had to go to work. So I had to hire somebody. And that person wouldn't show up. I'm at work thinking she's there. She's not. She'd leave early, that kind of thing. So, and when I first met her, my gut instinct was like, but because I felt like I didn't have a choice.
Yeah, you really were.
But,
yeah.
So I would say, if you were, the head of a company and you were getting ready to hire a chief operating officer or something, the same kind of things that you would look for because you're putting your trust in this person or company, that would be, and don't deviate from that. Like, if you get a bad feeling about them or if they don't have, that's true. If they don't have the right credentials, but I still say an agency because it's their responsibility to find a replacement if the person that they assign to you can't show up, as opposed to you, scrambling like, oh my God, I don't even know where else to turn or who else to call or whatever. Let that be somebody else's job.
I agree. We can also look at the state area, and in every state is different areas on aging. The Dementia Society of America also can help you find a geriatric care manager who can then help you do that. So that's something to think about. And we also know with COVID, having enough personnel and staff has been an extra challenge these days. So it does take some planning ahead, and I would say word of mouth if there's other families that have worked with an agency in your area to think about that as opposed to picking one out of a hat.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult too, because with dementia people, consistency is important, not changing their routine too much, not changing their environment too much. But even if you could get like maybe a church member or a couple of like a team, like maybe two or three people, um, you know, to take shifts or turns or something.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
fill in, the times in between with family members, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. And so the comments are coming up. Yes, aging life care professionals are invaluable and worth spending money on. So looks like a Maureen had advocated for that. So some people don't have the time to do all. It's another job to find a caregiver. It's a part-time job. So finding people with expertise who know how to do that might be able to relieve some of that stress and that burden. Well, we could go on and on. Obviously, being a caregiver, being an advocate is it can be overwhelming, but it can be satisfying, and it has spurred you on to let people know that Vanessa is also on the advisory board of Dementia Society of the Advisory Council at the Dementia Society of America. So she is a continued advocate to use this experience and then to help others in this, in this time. So Vanessa, thank you. I am going to now try to share my screen, and hopefully the rest of this technology will work. Fingers crossed. And everyone, thank you for your wonderful questions and comments. Oh, it actually is. Might do it. Okay, we did the conversation. We did the questions. So here's the slide for Dementia Society of America. Please, if you haven't had the opportunity, take a look at it. It's just chock full of resources and people you can talk to that might help in terms of finding caregivers and education. And if able, please consider supporting financially so that they can continue this work on a voluntary basis. All right. So with all that said, Vanessa, thank you for
you're so welcome.
honoring us with all the work you've done in honor of your mom and the work that you continue to do. And good luck with your travel agency. I might take you up on that.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm ready. I am ready. All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining us and all your wonderful comments. And this program is recorded and will be up on the website. So stay tuned and you can share that with others. All right. Take good care.
All right. Thank you, everyone.